Welcome to another episode of Monster Monday from the Ready to Die channel. This series explores the design of a creature I have built for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. The stat block for this creature can be found over on the Monster Monday blog, as well as the Twitter and Discord, all of which are linked below. I'm back to the world of Monster Hunter to make the marginally mauve malevolent monster, the Magnamalo. The poster boy of Monster Hunter Rise, the Magnamalo is faced somewhat early, but comes back big later in the game. I talked it out with the lads over in the Monster Monday Discord, and we landed on level 15 for this creature. Like many of the other monsters of Monster Hunter, this is an animal, since it doesn't have the intelligence to justify the beast trait. I think there could be an argument there, mainly because it does show some capacity to think, but I settled on animal for the time being. The Magnamalo is a very physically capable creature. It is fast, it is strong, and it is durable, and I try to represent that in this build. Given its bulkier frame, I picked strength for its extreme bonus, making this the basis of its fighting style. But its dexterity is also high, as it does demonstrate spectacular agility, especially as it leaps and twists around the battlefield. Its moderate constitution represents that it is still a fairly bulky beast that is noted to be quite capable of taking some serious hits. But while its physical abilities don't dip below moderate, wisdom is its highest mental ability with only a low bonus, this being some of the push and pull in its design. Partially influenced by this, it has a moderate perception, which might seem low given that the Magnamalo is a hunter, but in addition to that low wisdom, it is noted to feed on the overabundance of creatures during a rampage, which seems like it might not require as much in the way of keen senses, though this creature does have dark vision and scent. With the similarities in its strength and dexterity, its acrobatics and athletics are both high, and fairly important in its design. It also has a moderate stealth, but that just feels natural to me for a hunting type creature to have. In addition to being a nimble creature, the Magnamalo is covered in heavy plates, almost resembling the armor of a samurai. This lends to it using a high armor class, as even the blows that are able to land upon it may not be able to penetrate this shell. Balancing that out, while playing into its moderate constitution, the Magnamalo has only moderate hit points, though it does have the very common immunity to fire. I personally dislike contributing to its overuse, but this is based on its elemental weaknesses and resistances in-game, which is also the reasoning behind its weakness to electricity. Notably, its biggest weakness is water, which I didn't make as a regular sort of weakness. Instead, I thought it would be more fun, a little bit more interesting, to create Douse Flames. This ability rewards characters that recall knowledge because it can shut down a Magnamalo hard, which did make me a little worried about including it. But I think it's a very unique way to represent its weakness, and I like it for that aspect. Now, before I can get into discussing its other abilities, we do have to finish up talking about the numbers, moving on to the saving throws. Obviously, its reflex is high, based on its high dexterity, and some of the twists and turns that it pulls off while leaping around. Similarly, it has a moderate fortitude, to match its moderate constitution, and then a terrible will save. This is based on its low wisdom, but I also wanted to push this a little bit further because of its greater reflex and fortitude saves, to help balance things out a bit. Our abyssal animal is armed with an array of attacks, an honestly astounding arsenal that naturally includes its claws, armed with a high attack bonus, and its bladed tail and jaws, which are armed with moderate attack bonuses. But I also wanted to represent the orbs of hellfire, the Hitodama type flames that it throws at its enemies, and I thought the best way to do so would be to actually make it a strike. Now, as a note, I didn't want to refer to its abilities as hellfire, since that is something that already kind of exists in the world of Pathfinder. Instead, as suggested by Dinnerman from the Monster Monday Discord, I'm going to call it Sinfire, based off of the sinister epithet applied to its armor sets. These orbs seem to track the enemy in-game, which leads to a high attack bonus for it, though between this and its range, it's only dealing low damage. Its claws are next on the totem pole due to their agile trait, dishing out damage between low and moderate because I didn't want to make them too high, and reduce the value of its other attacks. Its blade tail has high damage, since it does at least have the sweep trait, which is based on the wide encircling attacks that it will sometimes make with its tail. Finally, to help set it apart, and because it has no other traits, its jaws deal extreme damage, which isn't something I often use, but with those nasty chompers it's got going on, I felt like it could work. That felt like it was more to go over than usual, but now it's time to get into discussing the fun parts, its abilities. First and foremost is Bounding Leaper, a passive effect styled after Quick Jump, with a hint of Cloud Jump, and based on the way it leaps and bounds across the battlefield. Notably, the Magnamalo has no compunction about going after flying creatures, which inspires the last line concerning high jumps. But this ability builds into the Magnamalo's redirecting fire. One of the coolest aspects of this creature, and one of the main reasons that I wanted to try to bring it into the world of Pathfinder, is its ability to just alter its path mid-flight. It's extraordinarily dynamic and can rapidly change the angle of a combat, which led to me representing it with a reaction that has the fire trait, because the Magnamalo does this by creating an explosive burst that sends it in a different direction. This lets it perform a second jump in the midst of the first, almost like a wall jump, but not requiring anything for it to jump off of. The sudden change on the angle is often surprising, which means that when it uses this reaction, creatures are then off guard to it until its next strike. Pathfinder 2nd Edition really let me push how I can make this work, because I wasn't certain initially, but having it be a reaction works out almost perfectly. The next central aspect, and arguably even more so, of the Magnamalo's entire kit is its Sin Fire. This actually relates back to the strike we discussed, and passively applies to any of the fire damage that the Magnamalo deals. It is based on its unique Hellfire status from Rise, though I did have to simplify it a bit. A creature has until the end of their turn to get rid of this status, by moving at least 30 feet, based on wire dashing removing the status in game. But if a creature doesn't remove it, the flames detonate at the end of their turn, dealing slightly below unlimited use area damage with a high DC reflex save. Which is unfortunately a save that may get a bit overused in this Demonic Dangers design. Now the Magnamalo has a ton of ways to deal this fire damage. Outside of the aforementioned Sinfire Rain, there is its Sinfire Rifle, an attack where the Magnamalo whips up a torrent of purple flames around its tail that it then unleashes in a wide blast, represented by a 10-foot wide and 90-foot long line that deals unlimited use area damage at a high DC reflex save, the combination of which you're going to be hearing a lot of this video. At a slightly longer cooldown, and one that ties back to its Hellfire, is Hell on Earth. This uses a DC between high and moderate, but with the dust lingering on the ground, prone creatures further take a penalty on their save. Its damage exceeds the limited use area damage, which lends to a higher cooldown, with a minimum of 2 rounds. But the penalty on prone creatures and the 2-action use is specifically meant to combo with the Magnamalo's Magna Clutch reaction. This causes the Magnamalo to snatch a creature in its jaws and hurl them skyward, and is mechanically based on the fling ability of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. This is the Magnamalo's pin attack, and it typically catches them in an explosion when they fall. I wanted to sort of combine a few of the Magnamalo's abilities, so this throw is reduced to a reaction, which allows it to be mixed with its 2-action abilities as long as it lands that critical hit with its jaws. Most specifically, this is meant to combo with Hell on Earth, since the creature lands prone from falling, unless they have something that prevents them from taking damage when they do so. Continuing the Magnamalo's fiery features is Hell Dive, a very coincidentally named ability, which is one of Magnamalo's more unique abilities in Rise. It opens by dashing around like a coked out cat with the zoomies, leaving behind bursts of Sinfire. This is initially represented by its striding and dealing unlimited use area damage at a high DC reflex save to any creature that it moves adjacent to. This particular design is borrowed from the Nightmare, but it is followed by the Magnamalo pouncing upon you, though having experienced this, it's more like a monstrous meteor launching itself at you. Its landing causes it to explode in a burst of Sinfire, dealing unlimited use area damage and extreme DC, for similar reasons as its redirecting fire where it can seem to come out of nowhere. Now I'm sure that you've noticed that the Magnamalo mostly manages abilities that deal fire damage, which is why Douse Flames is such a debilitating effect to land on it. I think if players are consistently shutting down the Magnamalo's abilities with this, the GM should play it that the monster turns tail and flees away, running off to lick its wounds and seek out easier prey. However, for those odd rounds when it's affected by this or when it can't flee, I gave it Pounce. The Magnamalo does have some design as a skirmisher as demonstrated by both this ability and others such as Hell Dive and Redirecting Fire. This is a fairly classic effect often seen on other cat-like creatures, which the Magnamalo's design does evoke some feelings of. Within Rise, Magnamalo armor grants you a Hellfire Cloak skill that afflicts you with Hellfire when a monster enrages, but only deals chip damage to you, while dealing a heavy pop of damage to the monsters that can send them reeling. I try to mix these ideas a bit and design the Hellfire Cloak, which aside from fire resistance, grants a flat bonus on intimidation checks. But more importantly, it has the Ignite reaction. Limited to a single use per day, and triggering when you take a critical hit, this causes the cloak to burn with that Sinfire, and deal damage to you that bypasses the resistance. However, in return, your attacks and spells deal additional fire damage and apply the Sinfire effect as seen in the Magnamalo's general design. And that is the Magnamalo. This brazen beast bounds across the battlefields, batting at beleaguered bait, before blasting into a blazing burst that burns breaths into barons. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to test this monster out due to some familial matters, but I would have loved to do so. This creature has a lot of stuff going on, has a lot of abilities to move, but might focus a bit too much on forcing reflex saves. Parties that have a higher focus on dexterity and features such as evasion might not treat it as much of a threat, as well parties that can easily bring water damage to bear against it. Despite these weaknesses, the Magnamalo should certainly prove a formidable foe, being highly mobile while forcing foes to remain similarly in motion, lest they suffer its Sinfire. Let me know what you think of this creature, and what others you would like to see down in a comment. If you want to check out the other monsters I made, or even the stat blocks on other versions of this monster, head over to the Monster Monday blog or Twitter, linked below. Thanks for watching, and have a monstrous Monday.